Hey guys, Drifter here. Today I want to criticize the Black Ops 4 beta. I did a bigger review called Black Ops 4 The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and my general opinion on the game hasn't changed that much since then. However, getting the beta out into public hands, playing it in a home environment, off of LAN, away from alpha with real normal gamers, there are some new issues that have come to light that I want to talk about. And I just want to focus on the bad things today. Pretty much nothing good in this video. I only wanted to focus on the things that I think Treyarch can improve either before next weekend or before the final game launches. The gameplay you're going to get to see is me using the Cordite with its special operator mod unlocked, which gives me a 600 round magazine as long as I don't let it overheat. I'm also going to be going to town on kids in the beginning of this video. My experience with the beta was kind of like an emotional roller coaster, and it was just up and down. I loved it, and then I hated it, and then I loved it, and I hated it. And one of the major issues that would force me to swap back and forth between love and hate was optimization. At home, I play on a PlayStation 4 regular. I'm on a launch day PlayStation 4 because I never believed that PlayStation 4 Pro was worth the money. I don't play on a 4K monitor, I didn't use PSVR as much as I thought I would, and it just didn't seem like a very good investment. Well, I'd only ever played Black Ops 4 on PlayStation 4 Pros, either at Treyarch or at E3 or somewhere else, and I gotta tell you, the beta never ran as nice on my PlayStation 4 as it did in those environments in Treyarch or in other big events. It was especially rough on launch night. Launch night was pretty brutal to me. After about an hour or two, I started realizing that I was getting about 45 to 50 FPS every single game. That also came with screen tearing and some other frustrating issues. Thankfully, the very next day, Treyarch dropped a hotfix that fixed about 90% of these issues. Apparently, there was a bug in the game that was forcing players into a lower frame rate than what they were supposed to be having, and I was getting that. So after that hotfix, my experience got way, way better, but it still did dip down to about 55 FPS every now and then, and I did get some frame skips on occasion, and even when I went back in Sony Vegas to edit through my videos, the capture software did capture some frame drops and skips, so that's kind of spooky for me. And it's better, but it's still not good, because Call of Duty has more or less enshrined that 60 FPS gold standard on console, and literally anything less than 60 FPS for a Call of Duty game is not acceptable, and it's very, very frustrating. A very similar issue that made I guess it compounded on the first one, is that it felt like Black Ops 4 was dropping frames every time I got shot, especially the first night or two until I got used to it. But every single time I would get into a gunfight, I just felt like I dropped frames like crazy. I felt like I couldn't see my enemies. I felt like I was losing track of everything. I thought I was blind. Maybe I'd become quadruple color blind. I thought I was going crazy. But after the first 2, 3, 4, 5 hours of gunfights, I started just getting super mad and losing my mind because it felt like I couldn't see people. Then later that night, I went back in Sony Vegas and I discovered that the new flinch mechanic darkens your screen almost to the point of being black when you're shot. And yes, I said that correct. So this game, like every Call of Duty game, has flinch. Great, we're fine with that. And as far as I'm aware, there's no perk that reduces flinch, which is fine by me too. However, every time you get shot, it literally darkens the screen around you and causes a very big visual distortion for several frames. And what I was feeling as a frame drop or a frame skip was actually this visual distortion, and I don't know if it's color blindness or, well, you guys will see it in a second. It was just so hard for me to see enemies, I just thought I was dropping frames. Let's just go ahead and go over to example time so you can see what I'm talking about. So to give you a really good example or two of what I'm talking about, here is me getting shot while I slink around a corner. You can see Prophet in the background, and I'm in Sony Vegas right now. I can go frame by frame. Every time my character moves, that's exactly 1 frame worth of data. You can see the guy shoots, you can see the little red indicator pop up, so I've taken a hit, and now, bam, that is my screen. That's a lot of visual distortion, but this continues for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we're pretty much clear at about 6 frames, and then 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, we're clearing up again. That is a lot of frames of visual distortion. Again, look how dark that gets. I can barely see the wall in front of me. Perhaps a better example is one actually in combat, if I can find where it was. I had it kind of time-stamped here. Let me scroll through and see if I can find that particular moment. I think it is this one right here. I move out of the spawn, I'm chasing Firebreak around, and let me go ahead and get to the juicy part. I'm doing this exact same thing. I'm going to engage in a gunfight. This guy's getting it worse than I am because I'm actually killing him, but I'm going to come around the corner, and I take one shot from behind me. As you can see on the minimap, one of the bad guys is behind me, but I get shot, and that is my visual distortion. At this point, for me, it's very difficult to see Firebreak. It's difficult to see my environment around me. It's difficult to see my gun. But let's see, that's 1 frame, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and about 10 frames, it's finally cleared up. Now, I've taken 3 shots instead of 1, but that is a lot of frames of not black screen, but very dark screen. There's another one of dark screen, it just resets it again, and I die. So let's say I'm playing aggressive, and I want to push the hard point. I'm still kind of coming into this 1 frame at a time, and I turn the corner, and there's some dudes here. We're going to start shooting each other at about the same time. He actually got first shot in on me. Or he missed a little bit. It's like I got first shots in on him. But then, come on, look at this, look at this. It just immediately darkens my screen and I can't see anything. You can also actually see a frame drop here. Happen to have a frame drop on a dark screen. So that's really, really frustrating. I mean, look how dark this is. That's just a little bit too much for me. I really, really don't enjoy that. In general, I don't mind flinch. I don't like when it's random and lucky and the enemy gets a headshot on me or something. And it doesn't really bother me that there's no flinch reduction perk either, because then everybody would run it. It's nice to have an even playing field. But this level of visual distortion is just too much for me. I find it very frustrating. It's almost an entirely subjective thing, and it's also like a historical Call of Duty thing that players complain about flinch. In this part, it's not the fact that I'm flinching, but rather the fact that my screen is darkening that really, really throws me off. Similarly, the sound when you get shot is pretty shocking too. It's very loud, it's cracking, it's popping, it's impactful, and it pretty much seems like everybody shoots cannons in this game. The hit scans, the smoke, the sounds are all super loud. So when you get shot, there's a huge audio-visual distortion, and it's very hard to overcome. Coming up next, connections were not consistent at all. Again, they generally did get better after launch night, though. Launch night, especially like 2 or 3 hours in when lots of people were getting online, was brutal for me when it came to connections. Some games, people would react insanely fast, and they would melt me after I would start shooting them first. I would shoot a guy like 6 times, and he'd shoot me 3 times, and then I would die instantly. And I think that almost tilted me off of the face of the earth. I was just going crazy. There was a lot of shoot first, die first. Then that drives me insane in video games, especially in Call of Duty, and especially in a game like this one where you have a really long time to kill. In a game with a short time to kill, I figure like, well, maybe he got a headshot, maybe there was a little bit of lag, and we kind of shot each other at the same time. But in a game with a time to kill this long, if I start shooting you and I get like 3 shots in, and then I get turned on and die instantly, we have problems. Again, whatever the hotfix did, or whenever the server stabilized, they got better, but it was very, very frustrating up first. I don't have any good data on this. I turned off my NetDuma filtering and the host pinging and pretty much everything because I just wanted to play on a normal connection. I wanted to see what a normal Black Ops 4 beta experience would be like instead of getting a nice, catered, guaranteed, dedicated server every single time, though the dedicated servers were probably most of the ones I played on. I only was able to go off my experience and my feels, but my feels were that the connections were inconsistent. There were other games where I felt really, really godly. In case this one, I don't know if you noticed, but my enemies aren't reacting as fast as they probably should be. Some of them might be potatoes, and then others might be just getting some sort of connection disadvantage. I'm not sure, but it was never the same game from game. I couldn't really pin down a feel for it for the most part. The next issue on today's list is armor, and I think I've seen more Reddit posts and Twitter posts about armor than anything else in the game, but I'm with the community on this one. Normally, the community and I do not see eye to eye on all game balance issues. We have different tastes and wants, but in this case, armor literally drove me up a wall, especially during my first couple days playing. Armor is essentially just free hit points, just extra health for the first fight, or maybe 2, it's kind of like a retooled Juggernaut or Painkiller, and I'm not exactly sure how they've changed it from Alpha, so I'll have to look into that one, but it was very, very frustrating for me to start a gunfight against an armored user and just accept the fact that I'm gonna lose. I would turn a corner and I would see a guy and he'd see me and I'd be like, alright, it's gunfight time. I've got good aim, I'm confident, I aim down sights, and then I see that little armored icon pop up next to his name and I just gave up all hope, and I would just immediately in that fraction of a second think, okay, I just have to accept this death. That's great. He had armored and I didn't, and I lost this fight because I engaged, I suppose. The only way that I was consistently winning against armored users is if I could get in a guaranteed, not first shot, but a guaranteed first 2 shots, or sometimes in case the other guy was just an idiot. Like if the other guy was just a new player, he didn't know how to aim, or he couldn't reposition well and I was hopping around like an idiot with a shotgun or SMG, then maybe I could have some kind of advantage. But most reasonable players that had armor would just beat me hands down, even if they didn't aim as good as I could. It feels like armor just allows all the little Timmy no-thumbs out there to cheese one easy kill and get a participation ribbon. I'm not super sure how the mechanics work exactly. I'm not sure if armored only counts for 1 life now, or if it is a simple first shot negation, or if it's a damage reduction from shots incoming, or how much damage you have to take to break the armor before it doesn't come back. I wasn't able to test it because, again, it's a beta and I can't like load up custom games or anything. But it was frustrating, and in general, the AP rounds do seem to counter armor. I, again, wasn't able to test that, so I don't know if they counter it and that they negate the armor, if they penetrate the armor, if they break the armor so you can't regen past it or whatever. But I would run AP rounds on just about every single weapon that had them, and with the exception of the AUG, I generally avoided weapons that didn't have AP rounds. I needed AP rounds to be competitive against armored users, so that was frustrating as well. I think if I had a single crutch attachment or perk, it would be the AP rounds, because armored tilted me that hard. And I have to be very clear and plain and blunt that I think that armor should be removed. Like, seriously. When players don't have the same amount of health, that is a serious vertical to overcome. And yeah, they can run acoustic sensors so they can hear footsteps, or they can run gear charge, which I did so I can spam my abilities, or, you know, something more like stim so they can heal fast. But none of those make any difference in a gunfight like Armored does. Armored just guarantees you a couple of free shots in a gunfight, which is just a free kill. And that was just not fun to play against. Another thing that wasn't particularly fun to play against, though it was fun for you to use, is that there was too much boost sliding and bunny hopping in this game. It didn't really feel like a particularly grounded experience. You can do a lot of the same old Black Ops 3 or Infinite Warfare tricks, like jump up to a ledge and then boost slide off to like fling yourself really far on the map. I enjoy speed. I like going fast in games. I don't like going slow. So having the ability to boost slide feels good when I'm doing it. It's satisfying when I'm doing it. But there are some... It's frustrating to play against, especially because you don't have to build up much momentum to do it. You can enter sprint for like a half a meter, just so long as your character is technically sprinting, and then you can hit the boost button and you can immediately boost slide. So I would turn corners on people that were just walking, and they would just hit sprint boost slide super fast, and they would just like take off on jetpacks on their knees, and that was kind of annoying. Most of my gunfights were like this. There was a lot of just slide in, hip fire, SMG. Most people that had SMG or shotguns were just sliding and hip firing me, and I felt like I was living this soccer commercial. Like, it was basically this soccer commercial, but with guns, and people were just sliding around constantly shooting. The jump height out of the slide is a little bit high too. There's definitely been some screenshots on Reddit about it, but you can get some pretty impressive height on people just with your regular jumping. And I don't know if Treyarch can really fix that, because if you fix the jump height, then there's lots of climbing points and jump and climb points on the maps that probably won't work right. A lot of advanced pathing that won't be as functional. But in general, if I could, I would tune down the sliding and the jumping just a little bit. It doesn't need to be removed because it does add a nice kind of satisfying speed mechanic to the game, but it just needs to be a little bit more within the realm of sanity. And speaking of sanity, let's talk about the radar. In general, I like the ideas behind the new radar. I like the fact that you can share it with your team, that you're not always on as a red dot when you're shooting, the fog of war, the vision, except I really don't like the part where they can see behind you. I'm not sure if this was an alpha or not, or if I just maybe didn't notice it, but as of right now, you get a perfectly spherical vision area that you unveil as you walk around. Every single thing that's in your line of vision in front of you, and oddly enough behind you, is revealed and tagged on the minimap kind of like a blackbird. That dot is just there, and it is perfectly tracked. The problem with this is it really punishes people that flank, and makes it super hard for me to sneak up on people, because if like some guy's like head glitching and holding a corner and I sneak up behind him, the very second that I see him, because we have a line of sight on each other, it's immediately going to tag me on his radar, so he's just going to turn around and shoot me. There was a whole lot of moments where I would just scream, how did this guy know I was here? How did he know? How did he know to turn around? How could he react so fast? There was no way he could have known I was there. Well, it's simply because he was staring at the radar, and the moment I turned the corner and saw his back, he could see me out of the eyes that he has in the back of his head, and he just turned around and hosed me. That was infuriating. I'm losing my words thinking about it. Infuriating. I hated that. It didn't feel advantageous to flank people, and that makes no sense whatsoever. Also, it auto-scans so well and so fast that in this game, I stared at my radar a ton. The exact opposite was true when I was playing in Alpha for whatever reason. I used the radar for tactical advantage, but in this one, there were so many people being tagged on radar, so many red dots, so much scanning, so many things. I probably looked at my radar more than the actual gameplay, and I would just bumble around ignoring the game world looking for the red dots on the radar to show up. The best way I think to fix this is, I had this exact same idea, but a Reddit user explained it better than I can. His name is u/World War IIer, but basically the best way to do it is to have your radar scan kind of like a flashlight field of vision, like Metal Gear Solid bad guys. It's kind of a standard thing in any stealth game, in that human beings see in a little cone around them, but not on the sides or behind. And I think that changing the radar to be like that instead of spherical would allow people to feel rewarded for flanking, and it would make a lot more sense. I do totally get that they want some sort of vision behind you, because in real life you're going to hear Firebreak stamping around with his big suit, and he's not going to be able to walk up and touch you without you noticing. So my suggested fix to World War IIer's suggested fix is maybe have the traditional cone in front of you and sort of like a small little insular bubble around you. The one that you have now is probably about 7 to 8 meters, maybe even 10. Let's just tune that down to like 2 or 3. We can cut that down to about a third of where it is. So if people walk up within like shotgun range, melee range, just really, really close to you, you're gonna see them, but you don't get to scan them from super, super far away. The last big issue I had was spawns. Spawns for control and TDM were just fine. Hardpoint and Dom were pretty rough for me. I felt like I was spawning way too close to the action a lot of the times. In the case of Hardpoint, it felt like it made more sense because I could spawn and get close to the HP and contest pretty fast, though it did make controlling the map really hard. But Domination was rough. Domination spawns were definitely very, very rough for me. I got spawn killed and spawn trapped just on normal spawns quite a few times. But more so in spawns, I have to ask Treyarch, why did you break the spawn beacon? It seems like they tried to buff the spawn beacon in some way, because when I played in Alpha, the spawn beacon activated nearby spawn points, and it was often kind of far away for like safety reasons. You would put your spawn beacon down and it would just turn on like 5 or 10 spawn points that it was close to, and you would spawn somewhere within like 20 meters of the beacon, just kind of wherever it was safest. However, in the beta, it seems to be much, much stronger than that. Maybe there's more spawn points on the map. Maybe it tries to put you as close to the beacon as possible. But you're basically spawning right on top of Seraph's spawn beacon, which is kind of like a team tac insert. And it's just like, WTF is going on here? Why are so many people spawning literally in front of me? The spawn beacon is by far the most powerful specialist ability in the game. It makes pushing an objective super easy if your teammates hide it well. It makes defending an objective nearly impossible if the enemy team gets their spawn beacon in a good location. If you have an idiot on your team that picks Seraph and puts it in a bad spot, it's just going to get you killed a ton, because they're just going to sit there and spawn kill you off that beacon, because you can accidentally double tap X and spawn on the beacon. The spawn beacon also allows Seraph to respawn in Search and Destroy, which is disgusting. All I can just say to that is just no. You shouldn't be respawning in Search and Destroy. That's not a thing. But in general, I get the impression that Treyarch decided the spawn beacon needed to be stronger, and they buffed the, let's say, the distance to the spawn beacon where you can spawn, so it really is more like a tac insert, and it was incredibly frustrating. The way that it needs to be fixed is not changing the timer, it's not causing it to cost more points or whatever, but rather it just needs to go back to how it was in alpha, at least perceptually for me, to where if you put down a spawn beacon, you spawn kind of sort of somewhere close to it and not literally on top of it all the time, or put a limit to how many times you can spawn on it. Because right now it just sits on the map for a good bit of time. You could just have it like, well, the spawn beacon allows you like 5 spawns or something like that. But as it is now, you can just team tack insert, and I really, really hate that. Some more minor criticisms: razor wires, too much hit points, lobby times too long, the load times are oddly too long and inconsistent, not sure why, and Nomad is annoying again. I hate his stupid mines, and I hate his stupid dog that comes and bork bites and I die. And that is my criticism of the Call of Duty beta. There are good things I can talk about. I like the gun balance. I generally like the team play. I hate when I'm on Team Potato, but in general, when you have a good team, playing against another good team is really fun and really satisfying in this game, like almost any hero shooter should be. And, you know, there's lots of quality of life improvements, lots of good attachments, lots of interesting perks and combinations, lots of valid gameplay strategies. I think the specialists are overall less frustrating in public matches than I thought they would be. They're playing fairly well in my opinion. But the things that I listed are things that I think Treyarch could, with a relatively small amount of effort, adjust or fix that would significantly improve the experience for everybody else when the final game comes out. Well guys, that's all for this video. I hope you enjoyed it and you learned something useful. If you did, don't forget to like, favorite, and subscribe. Drifter out.
He's down.